pleasure.
Hello.
Hey, Kerry, it's Edward and Bruce. How are you?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good.
Hey, Kerry, we've had you on the show before, haven't we?
I think we did one last year,
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, Edward was saying we did, and I didn't remember. My brain has been such a mishmash. I don't want to get into why. Starting this new job 8-9 months ago, and having a 12-year-old daughter who's going through puberty. Those are two
That's
things
the exhausting part.
Yeah.
Work is nothing. It's the daughter.
Actually, she's been cool, but it's been crazy. I'm not getting much sleep these days. But anyway, we're gonna have some fun. So we'll talk some NBA, we'll talk some basketball, and you're the expert, and we're just gonna throw questions at you.
Okay. Let's do a 2-minute.
Yeah. Okay. We'll do our little introduction here. Just hang on, and we'll get this out of the way. We record all these things.
All right. Here we go. To Sports Econ 101, the show where we discuss sports topics from a business perspective. I'm your host, Edward Brown, along with my co-host, Bruce McGowan, longtime sports radio personality. Now, today we're going to have a guest on. We've had one once before. Yeah,
we're going to have Kerry Keating on, a former college basketball coach who's an NBA consultant, also co-hosts a radio show on the Warriors pregame on their flagship station, 95.7 The Game. And Kerry has some interesting thoughts about the way the game has evolved, and I think you'll enjoy his comments and his perspective. So we're going to have some fun today talking hoops.
Yeah, I want to ask Kerry when he comes on in the next segment about how 95.7 The Game got the Warriors, because that
is an interesting story in itself. And I'm not sure if Kerry knows all the details, but it's interesting how teams now are looking, especially a team that's won a championship and wants more programming, and they weren't getting it on the number one sports station because the number one sports station in the Bay Area is carrying the Giants, who are a big deal. You know, baseball is a big deal.
Yeah, so, but when you have
an NBA championship,
and the Giants aren't doing well, and the season's over.
Yeah, but here's the deal: the Giants are paying a lot more money. It's all about the dollars and listeners. And you have to remember, not to knock basketball on the radio, but it's not real popular on the radio compared to baseball.
True.
Yeah.
But can't you can't have two sports?
You can, but somehow that fell through the cracks. You know, that's my old station for you. I worked there for 11 years, so I can say that. Yeah.
All right.
The sports leader.
And in honor of Kerry being on the show, today's trivia theme is NBA. We're going to have some questions about the NBA.
Sure.
And
sounds good.
Let's see here. This segment of Sports Econ 101 is sponsored by Pacific Private Money, providing mortgage investments that are still currently yielding over 7.5%, secured by California real estate, mostly in the San Francisco Bay Area, with no losses. Doesn't get any more conservative than that. You know, they've done over 1,400 loans, no losses.
No, that's I'll believe it when I see it.
Okay.
But you say
it is.
Hey, listen, you're an honest guy. So
I'm an honest guy. Well, I'm an investor in it too. So I can say I've seen that they don't have any losses.
Yeah.
All right, don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. I'll be right back.
Yep. All right. Giving you a hard time.
That's okay.
All right, Kerry, we'll get this kind of
some saving the file here, and then we'll.
Yeah, that was kind of an old-fashioned.
You get that kind of 1,400 and oh.
Yeah. That's kind of an old-fashioned slug.
It's 1,400 there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. I was going to say that Warrior game last night. That was kind of an old-fashioned slugfest. It reminded me of the old.
I'm surprised nobody got hurt.
Yeah. That's the way Memphis plays, though, isn't it? They always like to grab and push and shove and.
Got a little longer and athletic.
Yeah.
But they lost when Allen and Debo go, but apparently they still realize that the Warriors are a problem. So,
If they had Connolly, it would have been maybe a little different. Okay, if you guys are ready, here we go. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Again, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Bruce, you want to introduce our guest?
Yeah, Kerry Keating, who's been on the show before, former St. Mary's basketball coach, co-host of the Warriors pregame show on The Game, which is 95.7 FM in San Francisco, which carries the defending NBA champions, and also does some personnel consultant work with the league. And welcome to the show, Kerry. And before we get into basketball, I just want you to give our listeners a little background as to your interest in the game and how it all evolved, because I would assume as a kid you were playing ball, you're a big guy, you have a passion for the game, and you found your passion at an early age. How did all this happen?
I was raised by a coach, an athletic director, and pretty much born in the gym as well. And back then, he was in New Jersey.
We're having some problems here. Kerry, sorry, we're having some problems with your phone. We're kind of cutting in and out.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Why don't you start over again? Sorry.
Let me try, once you guys tell me on a different line, I guess.
Let's do that. That's okay.
Try 408
Mm-hmm.
966
966.
8776.
Yeah, that's always a problem. You're on a cell phone right now, and probably the landline would be better.
All right, I'm gonna hang up. I'm gonna keep recording. We're gonna call you right back. Okay.
All right.
All right, we're gonna try this again here. It's gonna be kind of loud, but it'll work.
Should we just re-record this segment?
No, that's okay. It's kind of fun having something a little different.
Yeah, listeners don't get a chance to hear this too often.
95.7 the game. Are they carrying the A's also?
All right, guys.
There he
is.
There he is. All right. So, Kerry, you were telling us a little bit about your background, and you were born into an athletic family. Your dad was an athletic director?
Yeah, he coached in college. He was assistant coach at Hofstra University on Long Island, and became an assistant AD there. And to my mom's pleasure, got out of coaching into athletic administration when we were young kids, but around basketball. And he went from Hofstra to Adelphi and was the athletic director at Seton Hall during their great run with PJ Carlissimo in the final game in the mid-'80s. And then he moved on to some conferences out in the East, and now is in his 15th year as a senior associate athletic director for basketball at the University of Kansas. So,
wow.
Yeah, you can say that basketball is part of our family would be an understatement. And,
It's in the blood.
Excited to have that opportunity. And it's exactly what led me towards coaching. I was a better baseball player than basketball player, and actually aspired to play baseball in college. But when I got a chance to actually coach while I was an undergraduate, I couldn't pass that up. And actually did that for 3 years. I was the first digital video coordinator in college basketball in 1990. We were the first school at Seton Hall to have a computerized editing system. So
wow.
All this analytics and digitization of video that we are so commonly using now at every level, from high school to college and NBA, I can make my claim as the first ever to use a computer for college basketball to edit our films for study.
Wow. How much has that really added to? I'm not dissing it. I'm just kind of wondering how much has that really added to coaching?
Well, it's interesting because we were just talking about that a little bit last night on the pregame show, and I think that the social media aspect, everyone having a voice, the adaptation of analytics into the NBA, and even more so a little bit in college, has kind of made it seem like that's where the coaching is stemming from. It's become almost exclusively numbers driven, but I think it's different in the sense that I think that just supports what the coaches already know. You know, the best players are making the plays, and your best defenders are making the defensive plays, and numbers just kind of support that. Now, the NBA has taken it to an extreme level. They're measuring distances of how far your defender is away and what your percentages are when the guy is within 4 feet, without 4 feet. I think it's great to have supporting data like that. I think it's the coaches that are trying to coach millennial players now can utilize that support there through coaching roots. I think it helps. I do think you run into a little bit of a danger if you're exclusively looking at numbers, and I think it's hard to sustain that at a very high level.
Well, and the players have to remember that too. You know, while they're playing the game, it kind of sounds like a Moneyball for the NBA.
Yeah.
Well, everyone's been kind of searching that. I mean, I'm a sabermetrics guy. I took that in college. Like I said, I aspire to be a baseball player. Numbers can maybe tell a little bit more on a baseball field than they can on a basketball court, but again, we're in the age of computers and the age of analytics. I think everyone's just trying to find an edge. Now, there are ways you can do that. There are programs and applications that can help your program from the high level. The Warriors are one that are doing that. The Rockets are doing that. The GMS and MIT grad and very numbers driven. And I think it's just kind of, like I said, it just kind of justifies what your initial thoughts were, what your gut feeling is. I think that the best thing to do is to marry the statistical part of it with that gut feeling. You know, the old school, and we all saw Moneyball. You saw when Billy Beane went in there, made the Yale grad again because he knew the numbers and all the old scouts. This is what we know. I think you still have to have a healthy mix of that. I know one organization does a great job, that is the Rockets. They have a dedicated staff that only scouts based on numbers. They have a dedicated staff that scouts based on what they see in their evaluation. And obviously, I think this year, especially, the results just speak for themselves.
So the whole thing is so interesting, and yet at the same time, I'm sitting here, Kerry, and we're talking with Kerry Keating. I'm looking at a newspaper, a picture of Marcus Gasol surrounded by Patrick McCaw and Klay Thompson and David West and Omri Caspi, and he's trying to find a little bit of an avenue inside. And it all comes down basically to the game itself and your will to win and the desire and understanding how to find the open man. And I realize these analytics have been a huge boon to the game, but at the same time, it really hasn't changed that dramatically from the kind of basketball that I grew up with. And as a matter of fact, this is, to me, fascinating that the way the NBA is being played today is kind of like the way it was being played 40, 50 years ago when I was a kid.
Well, yeah, it's not as much one-on-one.
Unfortunately, to support your point, it is a lot of the NBA teams are now investing in esports and video games and making this a sporting event, because I think they realize they can push those numbers and the quest for numbers more within the esports world, while understanding that, and we know everything is cyclical, as you just mentioned. Everything comes back in a cycle in some way or another, whether it's fashion, whether it's style of play, whether it's the latest gadget. Everything kind of gets improved on, but at its root, it comes back. And I think from a basketball standpoint, where we can evolve the game with the three-point line, where we can evolve the game with really no low block play anymore, at least temporarily, while everyone's kind of spreading the floor out. At its root, the ball still has to go in the basket. You have to stop the other team from putting the ball in the basket. It's just a matter of how that happens. We've seen this evolution with ball screen defense. Everybody started hedging ball screens, throwing a big to stop the guard, and then they pushed all the ball screens side and they kept it on one side of the floor. They call that the ice or the down of the ball screen. Now everyone just kind of realizes the players are definitely better, but they've figured out how to counteract that on offense. Now they switched everything. Obviously the Warriors are kind of at the forefront of that, and now you see that happening all over, where a guy like Robin Lopez, Marcus Gasol, 5 minutes, or I should say Brook Lopez, not Robin Lopez, Brook Lopez and Marcus Gasol in particular, were came into this league as low block 5 minutes, have now evolved their games to being able to shoot 3 pointers. I mean, that number is hard to out-argue, and 3 is definitely more than 2. You need 33% to equal 50.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's kind of the genesis of where this all started. But I think at its root, you're still going to find, especially in the playoffs, you go back to the fact where one team has to stop the other more than the other team has to score, because scoring is at a premium right now. That's why the best defensive teams usually at the end of the day are the teams that also have a chance to win championships.
I mean, I could see how the sabermetrics, would help in the fantasy basketball. I can really see that.
Oh, yeah.
But I tell you, basketball is a lot more exciting now than it was, 15 years ago or so, when they were doing too much one-on-one. Everyone kind of stepped to the side. You'd see one guy on another, and it just wasn't very exciting.
And I think a lot of that, and Kerry, we'll get into this after we take a break, but I want to get Kerry's thoughts about the 90s and Michael Jordan and how everything changed dramatically in some respects. So let's take a quick break.
Okay, so here's our first trivia question. Again, Kerry, if you know the answer, don't say anything until we get back from the break. A player scored the most points in all of the 1990s. Okay. That's our question.
That should be an easy one, but it's not.
Well,
maybe it is.
I know you've heard of the player, that's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Email Edward at sportsecon101.com the answer to this question. Which NBA player scored the most points in the 1990s? All right. Don't touch that dial. When we come back, we're going to continue on with Kerry Keating, talking all things NBA. All right. So that's our second segment.
Good stuff, Kerry. Where did you go to college?
I went to Seton Hall. I went to go play. We had Craig Biggio and Bo Vaughn, the baseball player.
Oh, wow.
There.
Wow.
And John Valentine, who played for the Red Sox.
Sure.
Dana White played center field for the Mets. They actually went to the College World Series.
Wow.
I was over there and played baseball.
Yeah.
And
what a great experience.
Plus PJ into coaching when I was a sophomore.
It's interesting. You mentioned PJ Carlesimo. Many years ago, when I got blown out of my radio network job in New York in '81, I came home and I guess this would be 7 or 88, I think it was. They were out here playing in a tournament at Santa Clara, and there was a radio station. I think it was WFAN, because I did a lot of work for them, freelancing out here, and they wanted me to do a bunch of stuff with PJ after games, and I got to sit down with him and do a daily interview, pre and post. What a fascinating guy. And then, of course, he was coaching out here. Things didn't work out too well with the Warriors, but always liked his passion. He's doing pretty well now. Is he still doing the television with ESPN? Or
ESPN,
yeah, he's good at that. And just as you are.
Terry, when did you go to Seton Hall? What years?
89 to 93.
Yeah.
The year after the Final Four. And then I was there with Terry DeHare.
Wow.
And our tourist commissioners and Danny Hurley. I coached Danny Hurley, but ended up going to a final late week. We got upset our senior year.
Yeah, for some reason, it was just one of those colleges that I always used to.
I really became a fan of Seton Hall because of my little experience that one, tournament where it was only I think 2 games.
Yeah.
But we got PJ was such a personable guy and was so accessible and talkative like you and I and Edward.
I don't think Latrell thinks so, but that's okay.
Whatever happened to Latrell? He sort of disappeared from the face of the earth. Huh?
He wasn't making enough money, remember? All right.
Making too much money.
There you go. Let's continue. Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Edward Brown here along with Bruce McGowan. Here was our first trivia question. Which NBA player scored the most points in the 1990s?
Well, I'm going to let Terry take a stab at that because that's more his era. I'm going to. There's an obvious name, but I'm thinking it's somebody else. What do you think, Kerry?
I was going to say the same thing. I think everybody wants to say it was Jordan, but I'm going to guess it was Karl Malone.
It was Karl Malone.
Yeah. People forget Jordan missed 2 years. He took 2 years off.
Oh, to play baseball.
Yeah. To play baseball, and I think
Karl was always kind of trailing Michael at the top. They both averaged almost 30 a game pretty consistently. And I think people don't realize the longevity of Karl Malone and how many points he put over the course of his career. Of course, famously on most of the end of the assist that John Stockton. Great player. And I tell you what, a guy that would have a hard time, I think, playing the game exactly the way it's played today. He'd be able to make a lot of money. Don't get me wrong. The game is definitely not what it was today when he played as a true power forward.
I always felt badly for him because he didn't get that many opportunities. I think he just played in one finals, didn't he? With Utah, and that was it.
That's it.
Yeah.
So, which is unfortunate because Utah is kind of a back. People back in Utah don't think that way, but it is kind of a backwater outpost for the NBA. Well, Kerry Keating is joining us. We were talking about analytics, and Edward and I, and you were kind of educating us on what's going on today with all of the numbers. But I want to take you back, not that far back either, to when you were a young guy, and Edward and I were a bit younger, when basketball really went through a major change in the 1990s with Michael Jordan, who had already been a star, suddenly taking the Bulls to a higher level, and everybody was the old expression. I guess it was marketed by some shoe company, "Be like Mike," and so all the young kids wanted to be like Mike. Everybody wanted to be the amazing single player who could take over a game. And that really, maybe I'm simplifying it, Kerry, but that kind of changed the NBA, didn't it?
Well, I think what it did was it made athleticism come to the forefront. You mentioned in the first segment, Bruce, about how the game last night with Memphis was more of an old school, very physical, very grinded out, banging it out, high 80s, low 90s type game. And that maybe by design by the Grizzlies and not necessarily as we know the Warriors, but kind of takes you back to where the game was before athleticism ruled the day. The evolution in my mind came the guy we just saw have 2 numbers retired who really fully emulated and wanted to emulate exactly. Talk about be like Mike. He really took Michael Jordan's game and tried to put it in his own personal way. And obviously talking about Kobe Bryant. What the league has now done is they've really made an emphasis on drafting long, lean athletes. I mean, you never really see or saw the long, skinny guys in the NBA. I mean, you might have some lean, skinny guys who are good shooters, the Havlicek and the Bushers and Jerry West of the world. Great players, great passers.
No, but you're talking about someone like Ingram, right? For Lakers.
Yeah, it's coming to the point now where they're looking for speed and athleticism, obviously shooting, distance shooting. And I think that the reason why the game is so popular right now and the ratings are so good, that we're all kind of creatures of movement. We all appreciate movement in some way, shape, or form. So we get a chance to see 10 athletes on the floor moving. We get a chance to be up close and personal with them as far, depending on where our seats are. But they're approachable. They're visible, unlike football players. They're not far away like baseball players. The game moves. The ball moves. Players move. The game. You've seen a lot of points go up on the board right now, and it's the thing where I think it's going to evolve into kind of having to go back to having someone in the block to score on a consistent basis. But by and large, Michael Jordan started this athletic movement of having more players like him and less players like, say, Shaquille O'Neal. Not that he wasn't a great player himself. Obviously, we have guys like that. But the majority of guys now are long, lean athletes who are physical, can defend multiple positions, put the ball in the basket.
Yeah, Kevin Durant. That's
or an Anthony Davis who was just involved. That guy amazes me.
But what's interesting is because we've talked about this on other short shows when we've talked about football, how the guys are much more athletic, bigger, stronger, and all that. But the danger is, your ankle is only so strong, and guys are getting hurt, and they have to do all these protections. The good thing about basketball is, it's a little physical, but it's not like football. So you can have all that athleticism and kind of, sort of run and gun, so to speak.
Well, people can get hurt, as we saw in horrific kind of accidents, as Gordon Hayward experienced, but it is rare, and I guess that's the beauty of basketball, why it's so popular internationally now. And Kerry, tell me if you think I'm wrong here, but next to soccer, I think basketball is the most popular sport in the world today.
Ball over in countries like Europe, and they put a heavy emphasis on training the kids at a young age and working on skill development along with that athleticism. That influx has all happened in the last 10 to 20 years, where now you're almost exclusively having scouts park themselves over in Europe full time to watch the young players. And we're getting ready to probably see the next great European player come over. He's playing in the EuroLeague now. Luka Doncic is an 18-year-old point guard who's really kind of doing some amazing things. And fans will start to get used to his name as we get closer to the springtime of the draft. But you'll find him in the number 1 or 2 slot come next year's draft.
Where's he from?
I want to say he's Serbian, actually. That's a good question.
Yeah, somewhere in Eastern Europe.
So, Kerry, since you just mentioned about 18-year-olds and all that, I just saw.
It's Slovenian.
Slovenian. Okay, yeah, there is a difference.
So I was just looking on Yahoo Sports and noticed LeVar Ball. We all love him, huh? He's forming a junior basketball association designed to bypass NCAA and pay high school prospects up to $10,000 a month, which would allow talented players the opportunity to prepare for the NBA without having to go through the old one and done.
Well, you also know he's sending his kids to some obscure league in, I think it's in Belarus or the Ukraine. Is that right, Kerry? Lithuania. I mean, yeah. Some thoughts about what Edward was just talking about. I mean, this guy is a fascinating character, and I he's a little bit of a blowhard, but I mean, how much legitimacy is there to this fellow anyway? I mean, I would sometimes wonder. He's got three great kids, that's for sure. I mean, these are athletes.
I don't know if that will eventually come to light. I think it's an interesting idea. Certainly, he's giving himself. Everyone else is now kind of forced to give him a little bit of a platform to have his voice. And a lot of this is based on the fact that what he's done with his 2 younger sons, and neither of them are going to college, and he's probably going to try to put it in a position where he's going to try to give an opportunity to other kids who don't want to do that. But there is an opportunity for kids to do that now. It's called the G League. Kids can do that out of high school now. I don't know if it'll ever take off. It's going to require a pretty good amount of planning and organization and money. Quite honestly, the level of play would be something. If I'm an aspiring 18-year-old kid that has a chance to play in the NBA, let alone be drafted, I think the last thing I'm going to do is play in a league that is, I would say, haphazardly put together, but put together solely to not go to college. Because as we know, the biggest threat to your future is going to be a catastrophic injury. And the best place for that to happen is at a place where there are a majority of kids who have nothing to lose. There'll be
good point.
Kids in that league with nothing to lose, as opposed to you being one of the better players with everything to gain. So we'll take a wait and see approach on that. I'm not too optimistic that it'll happen.
Well, also, you get direct competition with the NCAA, and NCAA, feeds into the NBA, so there's that issue too.
Well, the NCAA is at a crossroads right now. Obviously, we all know what happened with the FBI and the investigation that resulted in 4 schools getting penalized and 4 coaches, actually. Everyone's kind of waiting to see if more are on the way, but the NCAA has to make a decision as to what the definition of amateurism is, and if that applies to all sports that they support. The problem that they have, guys, is that the NCAA tournament, in and of itself, in that 1 month in March, completely funds every other Olympic sport for the NCAA. Football has been removed. The schools have removed that and kind of taken their own money and spending their own money on. But basketball for the NCAA and for the schools that are in the NCAA, they need that tournament. So for the schools that want to secede from that potentially, they have to come up with their own money to run their Olympic sports. So if Stanford left the NCAA and wanted to go into a different league with 80 other schools, they could certainly keep all that money, but they wouldn't have the ability to run the NCAA tournament the same way, thereby get the money back to run the. So they're a little bit cost-bill. I think it really comes down to the NCAA stepping up and potentially changing the way that they've done business forever, and that really centers around how they view amateurism as it relates just to basketball.
Yeah, it's a shame that money always has to rule the roost, but I think that's been the case from day one when they first started paying athletes. And we forget that the pro basketball has only been around since 1946. That was the first year, and it wasn't even called the NBA in those days. I think it was called. Kerry Keating is joining us, by the way, in case you just joined us. And Kerry is the co-host on the Warriors flagship station, the Golden State Warriors, and defending NBA champions, 95.7 The Game, also an NBA personnel consultant. Edward was mentioning this to us off air about what happened to the Warriors. They used to be on my old station that I worked on for many, many years, KNBR, and went over to The Game. And I think The Game, it's turned out to be a great marriage. Kerry, you've gotten some work there, and more than that, they really spend a lot of time. Talk a little bit about what it's like here in the Bay Area to cover the Warriors, because it's a kind of a larger than life situation right now.
Yeah, as we all know, timing is everything in life. And what great timing to have a radio station that's trying to provide all the possible coverage they can for the best team in the world, and then for me to be in this position of transition and get into the media, have a chance to work for them on the pregame show and amongst some of their other programming when I can. I really enjoy doing it. Enjoy the people over there. Great hosts, great talent. Got some new leadership over there that just came in this past year. So looking forward to seeing what we're doing as we're moving from our offices or our station on 3rd and Howard over to the CBS station, I think over on Battery.
Yeah, you're going to be joining me because I work at one of the stations that's in that building. So
wait, hey guys, hold on. We have to do a quick commercial break.
Yes. We're up against the clock here.
That's right. Talking the NBA here. Okay.
You know about that, Kerry.
Born in Melbourne, Australia, I was the Timberwolves' first pick in the 1991 draft. I retired playing in 10 NBA seasons with Minnesota, Chicago, Phoenix, and New York. Who am I? That's our question. Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101. We'll be right back. Sorry about that, Kerry.
We have these
hard breaks because we're on Armed Forces Radio.
We're on this. The show goes out to Armed Forces Radio and a bunch of other stations, so it's interesting. I don't know if you've heard of Sports Byline. Ron Barr is the guy who runs it. He's had it for years, and when the ESPN came along, kind of put a ding in some of his work, and then they sort of told stations, if you want our programming, you can't have any other sports programming. So he lost probably I'd say about 70% of his radio, maybe 80% of his radio.
Well, and didn't 95.7, they're competing against ESPN, aren't they?
Yeah, you guys aren't carrying ESPN because I think KNBR carries ESPN. I'm pretty sure. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I can't keep track of all these things. They change every month or every year.
Yeah, it's only been around a few years, hasn't it?
What's that? ESPN?
No, 95.7.
Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, 95.7's been around about 4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
I mean, to be able to snag the Warriors like that.
Oh, it's a great cool. Yeah.
But don't they still have the A's too?
They do.
So they do. See, you can't have two.
The A's and the Raiders.
See,
yeah.
you can have more. So you can have 3 sports on one.
KNBR had it, but it's. I don't want to get into why KNBR lost it because I know why.
Okay.
I don't really know. I understand they were preempting with the Giants.
Yeah.
Kerry, I don't want to get into great detail or talk about this on the air, but I worked at KNBR for 18 years, and when they were bought by the new company, which has put them, they haven't really hurt KNBR too badly, but they ruined KGO where I worked later, and just downsized everything. So I'm really happy that the Game is making a little dent in their ratings, because I think the way that your station covers sports is a lot more for the hardcore fan and for those of us that love sports rather than just the noise and nonsense you hear. So much,
Sure. Good.
All right.
Yeah. All right.
Can you stay on one more?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Appreciate it, Kerry.
Yeah. Okay,
here we go.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. One more time. I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. Second NBA trivia question. Born in Melbourne, Australia, I was the Timberwolves' first pick in the 1991 draft. I retired after playing 10 NBA seasons with Minnesota, Chicago, Phoenix, and New York. Who am I?
Kerry, who was that man? That best?
I know that guy because I followed up the most famous Australian basketball player of all time, Andrew Gage at Seton Hall. So I know about Luke Longley.
Luke Longley, that's right. Very good.
Yeah. And Luke Longley was one of those guys, I think a hardcore NBA fan knew him, the casual fan knew about him, but he had one of those names, too, that sort of jumped out at you, you know?
LUC?
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah, he was good.
Luke
Yeah.
Good ball player.
Yeah, he was.
Well, Kerry Keating is joining us. You know, let's talk a little bit about the NBA right now, because the Warriors are obviously, they've been playing, as we speak, a little shorthanded. No Steph Curry, no Zaza Pachulia, or Draymond Green,
Or Sean Livingston.
Yeah. Or even Andre Iguodala was out the other night, and they still managed to win. I mean, what makes them such a good team, besides just the fact that they have all this incredible talent and a deep bench?
Well, I think one thing that stands out, I've been reflecting on these injuries and how they're going to get through this key stretch right now. They are so far winning 10 in a row, 5 without Steph, I think actually 6 without Steph and 5 without Draymond. Food. I think they've got the good fortune of having 4 all-stars, 4 superstars that in their own right really make the rest of the team understand how important they are towards those people's success. And what I mean by that is, as evolved, and obviously a now famous second-round pick who's an all-star and the best defensive player in the year in the league. But he's a selfless player and a 4-year college player. And think his upbringing with Tom Izzo, Michigan State, as a team guy, is paying off dividends. Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, Steph Curry, potential Hall of Fame players. All 3 will eventually be Hall of Fame players. Are the quintessential superstar in this system for Steve Kerr, because they really don't care who gets the credit. You know, when I coached at UCLA, I was fortunate to spend a lot of time with Coach Wooden before he passed away. And one of his was, it's amazing what gets accomplished when no one cares who gets the credit. I've never really heard Steve Kerr say that. I don't know if that's up in their locker room. I don't know if that's something that's been reiterated to them, but I get the feeling like that is their baseline mantra. That's kind of how they go about it. I think what Steven said is kind of modernized that, is he wants this player we used so often to play with joy. I think you get a lot of pleasure in other people's performance, other people's success, when it has a direct effect on you. This is definitely a team sport that can be individualized to an extent, sometimes at the detriment of the team's success. But I think these guys have done an unbelievable job. And guys, this is why Steve is not hesitant to play 11, 12, or 13 guys in the first half of the season, because they're all pros. They all can help in some way, shape, or form, and they all are going to get a chance to the overall product to help this team get back to June for the 4th consecutive year. And what we're seeing in these last 10 games is exactly that. No Steph, no Draymond. Last night, no Andre. Sean Livingston's been out. Everyone's kind of stepped up and kind of had a hand in this, and the results have been they've been able to keep pace with the hottest team in the league, the Houston Rockets, in the all-important race for #1 seed in the Western Conference.
You know, what a gift it is for someone like Jordan Bell, you know, to start off with a team like this and see the unselfish play. Great grooming process.
You can't ask for a better situation, and I think social media will sensationalize the fact that he was bought for $3.5 million from the Bulls. That's just the way that's the logistics set up, and the fact that the Warriors wanted to get him if they had that pick and he was available, and the Bulls were takers for the cash at the time. It could have been any one of the other 28 teams, and it could have been any other slot if they came above 37, wherever Jordan was taken. What you saw the other night, I think, is indicative of exactly the benefit that Jordan's going to have. Blocked a shot on Brandon Ingram at the Staples Center. He stood over him while the ball was still live, and he kind of stared him down. And the play was still going on the other end. He missed an opportunity in Coach Kerr's mind, potentially get a tip dunk on a Patrick McCall miss, while Ingram was still on the ground, the ball was still live. Most important part of being a shot blocking, rim running athlete, which essentially is what Jordan Bell at his root is to make the next play. And when he doesn't make the next play, there's a luxury that Steve Kerr has to take him out, teach him that lesson, have that lesson imparted again by his peers on the team because of the success they've enjoyed with that prior to Jordan's arrival. It's only going to make Jordan a better player. And really, they're grooming him to be a starter, if not next year, full-time the year after, what's going to be another championship run.
Yeah, because he's kind of like a Draymond, where he's not a shooter, but he's just a defender at the rim.
No, he's definitely he's he's a low block, under spot, roll scorer. He's got to develop 17 shots. Yeah. I say the guy is more important, in my mind, the guy that's more important for his short-term development from this year to next year is not so much Draymond Green, although that's very important from the defensive perspective, David West. If anyone is playing at a 6'9" power forward position, making 17-foot jump shots, it's David West. Yeah. That guy is having
he's having a good year.
I was going to ask you about David West because I wanted to transition to that. He's a fascinating character. He's like 34 years old, and yet the other night he made the play of the night, blocked the Lonzo ball layup that saved a win. And he's also, a very well-read guy, a very thoughtful guy, played a long time in the NBA. I mean, somebody like that, having that kind of almost a sage in the locker room is such a benefit, I would think, to Steve Kerr. It's almost like having a coach on the floor.
Well, let's not forget, after a successful career at Xavier, he was a two-time All-Star at New Orleans, I think, when Chris Paul was there. So this is a guy who's reached the pinnacle at his position by being named an All-Star not once but twice, has really taken care of his body. Obviously tried once before to simulate himself in a championship setting with the San Antonio Spurs, put himself in a position probably even before a guy like KD, who may take a little bit of flack for chasing the ring. David West really did that, but he did it in a sense where he brought something to the table that's of extreme value. He was voted teammate of the year last year in the league. He's healthy as he's ever been. His shooting percentage, his ability to pass the ball. Let's not forget the biggest play, maybe. I tell you what, if this comes down to a one-game lead over the Houston Rockets at the end of the year, maybe the biggest play of the year that's reserved the one seed is that block.
Yeah.
And that's just a little play that kind of goes unnoticed. Maybe the next day it's all over Twitter, it's on ESPN. But from a coaching perspective, that's a block that you bring back up in highlight film when you're getting ready for the playoffs. That was a playoff type play.
Well, that was like when LeBron blocked Iguodala.
It was a great call. Great call by the Warriors announcer, radio announcer.
Go back to the beginning where we talked about George Bell. What is transitioning right now? It's how to make the next play. Just learn from David West. How to they just scored to go ahead at the other end. The Lakers didn't call timeout, has none left. Lonzo pushes the ball down, gets all the way to the rim. Next play, David West to the rescue. I mean, I'm in awe of David West.
Well, I really, as a broadcaster, I really appreciate it when an announcer understands what an important play that was. And I thought Tim Roy's call of that play, we replayed it on our station because we're a sister station of the one that you work on, Kerry, was great. And it sort of exemplified what this season and what this team is all about. They make the clutch plays at the right time. So it's a joy to watch them. I mean, you talk about the joy of playing. As a fan and even as a broadcaster, it's a joy to be around them. You don't see teams like this in any sport very often.
So, hey, Kerry, I want to ask you a question about Steph Curry coming, when he's going to be healthy. There's talk about him possibly playing Christmas because, they're playing the Cavs.
Actually, he's not going to play Christmas.
Did they decide he's not playing?
He's not going to play till after Christmas.
Okay, because that was going to be my question. It's like, you got to – Christmas is a huge day for playing basketball.
But it's not. It's only one game.
It's only one game. No, I appreciate it. And the thing is, it is the Cavs versus the Warriors.
And you got to remember, this guy's had a history of ankle problems.
But I'm actually glad that they're just saying, you know what? You have to look at his health first. And make sure you don't bring it back too early.
Well, I mean, Curry is a special kind of a guy, and what Edward is saying, and I agree with him, that you have to be very careful with him, right, Kerry? Because early in his career, we forget, the casual fan forgets that Steph Curry was by a number of ankle problems early in his career that kept him out. Matter of fact, he missed much of one season.
And the right ankle, the one that he turned in that New Orleans game, is the one that we're talking about. He already had surgery on it. So I think what you're finding out with the Warriors, as we mentioned earlier, guys, because of their depth, because of their trust in their bench, and because of the fact that, let's face it, you're doing the most important thing without Steph, they're winning. So I thought before the diagnosis came last night, we're going to reevaluate on the 26th, that if they had won these 3 games this week going into Christmas, that they definitely would play him. And I'm not saying they're just basing it on where their record's at. I'm sure Steve's the last guy to do that. But you're finding out that they're going to err on the side of caution with these injuries because they do have depth. And because this is now, don't forget, they're heading into their 4th year, potentially playing 100 games. And Steph.
That's a lot of basketball.
That's a lot of basketball. And everyone says, well. They're young, they're healthy, they're athletic, yeah, but banging, the physicality,
Travel.
basketball from September to June. Everyone else has done it in April and May, and then their fraction thereof as they get eliminated from the playoffs. They've gone to the tilt now, and they're expected to do it again, obviously this year and possibly next year. So this is a long-term view, and I think because of that, I don't think we'll see Steph. I'm not so sure that in the bigger things, guys, the more important time for Steph to be ready to play, and I'm not saying he's going to be out until then, January 20th. There's only 3 games against the Houston Rockets.
Yeah.
2 of them are at Houston within a 10-day period. The first one being January 20th on ABC. They've already lost the first one, and that's really where it comes down to in the head-to-head matchup. They have to win 2 of those games to win the head-to-head matchup out of the 3-game series with the Rockets. So it means he's going to be better suited to play on January 20th by not playing until, say, December 30th or January 1st. I think for sure you'll find the Rockets the Warriors holding it out as long as they possibly can.
Yeah, what's so frustrating is he did it, in the last, 15 seconds of the game,
Yeah.
something ridiculous. And weren't they already up by
The game out of reach.
And then usually
these
they
things happen.
don't even play in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, these things happen. I was gonna tease Kerry right away because he reminds me of myself. The great thing about radio is we can multitask. Well, people can't see this. Well, we're talking here. The phone's going off. Kerry's moving some dishes. I mean, my wife has always got me doing 5
I'm
things.
looking at the clock.
You're looking at the clock. Yeah. And Steph Curry is out there playing in a basketball game, turning his ankle. So the world continues to turn. Oh my goodness. Well, what's before we let you go, Kerry? What's on the Christmas plans for you? What are you're gonna be out there on Christmas Day watching the Warriors play the Cavs, I would think, huh?
We'll be there with our pregame show at 10:30 a.m. I think tip-off is at 12. And I'll be there staying out the game and enjoying some Christmas basketball. A lot of basketball starting last night. 7 home games in a 10-day series.
Yeah.
I'm actually heading up the road to Sacramento when I get off with you guys to go watch Kansas and Stanford tonight up in the
Oh yeah, that's right. And speaking of Sacramento, they won 2 games in a row on the road back east, back-to-back nights. That's a nice little, finally for that poor franchise up there, they finally get a little ray of hope, maybe, huh?
Don't look now. They have a Northtown robbery, buddy.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, Kerry Keating, thank you again for joining us once again on Sports Econ 101.
Great stuff, Kerry. Thanks so much, man.
Anytime, guys. Thanks.
All right. Good guy, and as you can tell, he's a real basketball junkie. Born into the game.
It's funny, I wonder how some of the players, when 95.7 first comes out, they go, "What, you guys are carrying?"
Well, I don't. To be honest with you, I don't think the players pay that much attention anymore to radio. I don't know.
Just there's a microphone in their face.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Here's the last. Now, this trivia question is really easy.
Yeah.
I figured the first one too. Before becoming the Houston Rockets, where did the team play? I figured I'd give an easy one. All right.
Yeah.
Don't touch that dial. Sports Econ 101 will be right back with some closing comments.
That was great stuff.
Yeah, no, he's really good.
Yeah, he is. He's very good. I'll send him a little quick text here.
Yes. Yeah, I usually do it at the end to just thank him. How did you know Kerry?
I've known him because he was the coach at Santa Clara.
Oh, yeah.
But I just knew him peripherally. But then he started working at the game, was it last year? And was sitting up in the press box. So we just started talking. And, he's a big guy, very, very confident, outgoing, articulate. And then you met his background. I all this stuff about PJ Carlissimo, his dad being a coach. It's great stuff.
Yes.
I wish I could get out to more games. That's the one thing I don't like about my shift. That we could probably do more remotes from the games, and it's a bloody hassle. I get home at like 2 in the morning because I have to get my interviews downstairs and come back upstairs, record some, and then come back and record some fresh stuff because there's more stuff going on, and I can't access my sound out there. I can, but it's just a bloody hassle. It's anyway.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
All right. Don't meet next week.
Yeah, good. I mean, not good, but just nice to, you know.
Let's have one in the can.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Okay.
Welcome back to Sports Econ 101. Last time for today, I'm Edward Brown, your host, along with Bruce McGowan. That was good stuff having Kerry on.
Yeah.
Good basketball knowledge.
Oh,
I like
yeah,
that.
a basketball junkie and a true basketball guy, you know, raised in the game.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
Yeah.
Third trivia question. Before becoming the Houston Rockets, where did the team play?
Played in San Diego.
San Diego.
Yeah, and you know who played on that first team? A good friend of mine, Jim Barnett, who was one of the Warrior broadcasters. Jim was the true basketball gypsy. He played with the San Diego Rockets, the Portland Trailblazers, the Golden State Warriors, the New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and Boston, and the New Orleans. They were called the Jazz in those days before they moved to Utah. And he played for, I think, 10 years for 6 different teams. But he got to play with Dr. J, with Wilt. He got to play with Rick Barry, Bill Russell. I mean, Bill Russell was his coach. His first coach was Bill Russell. Imagine that.
Did he play with Pistol Pete then?
He played with Pistol Pete down in New Orleans. Yeah, Pistol Pete Maravich. I mean, you talk about a guy who lived NBA dream from the mid-'60s to the mid-'70s, and that was a glorious time. I was a kid at that time, and that was the time I really followed the NBA when I was 14 to 24.
You know, it's funny because you think, gosh, that's kind of frustrating to have to, getting traded team to team to team.
No, the best thing that ever happened to him.
But that's the thing is you get to play with all these.
And he was a good player. He played. He was like the 6th man or 7th man coming off the bench, and he was one of those guys that would, throw his body at you. He was smart. He was a good teammate. And now he's like, I think Jim is about 72 years old, and he's still doing the color on the TV broadcast. And a couple of years ago, he was thinking of retiring, but he thought to himself, what am I going to do? Because I love being around the game.
Yeah.
So,
I appreciate watching him, do the broadcast because of his knowledge.
Oh, yeah.
It's amazing how much.
Well, it's not just the knowledge; it's the passion, and it's the way he presents it. I think that it's entertaining. That's important, in our profession. You got to be entertaining. Got to keep them laughing, It's
funny because he likes to tease me with the jokes. So that it's a little.
Yeah,
we're a little off color from each other. It's fun.
It's okay.
All right, here's our thoughts of the day. Do your work with your whole heart, and you will succeed.
Very true.
There's so little competition.
What's the last one?
There's so little competition.
Yeah, there is. Not a lot of people put their full hearts into their work. That's very true.
That's right. And keep your eyes on the stars and your feet on the ground.
That's a good idea.
All right. Tune in next week to Sports Econ 101. We're going to be discussing sports topics from a business perspective and asking more sports trivia questions. Thanks for listening. On behalf of our team, I'm your host, Edward Brown. We'll see you next week.
And happy holidays, America.
All right. So.
All right.
All right, boss.
Yeah, that was good. Always a pleasure. You got the thing back on.